Welcome to the RotoPros pre-lock MLB show for Thursday, April 5th, 2018. Just a 3-game slate today, but that's not stopping us from having a show for you guys. So without any further ado, let's just dive right in. Matt, what pitchers do you like in this 3-game slate? Not many to choose from, so
I don't really like this slate overall. This is a really hard slate. Robbie Ray has I guess it's a tough matchup, and he's really expensive. So, there's no way I'm playing Robbie Ray on a normal slate at 11.7K in St. Louis, a team that has a lot of good right-handed hitting. They're just a decent offense overall, and it's a road game. So I don't like Ray for his price, but every other pitching option is just so bad that I think I'll probably end up using Ray anyway. He has a pretty high floor with his strikeouts, and I think he'll be highly owned, but I think more people are going to go cheaper at pitching and just pay up for bats. I think that's going to be a really common strategy on this slate. So I think you almost have to use Ray because there's going to be leftover salary if you don't use him. Unless you just don't stack and just play the most expensive hitters. The Cubs are really expensive, so I think a lot of people might just use cheaper pitchers and stack the Cubs. I don't really think there's a lot of value there. The Cubs are insanely expensive. I mean, have you seen the prices yet for what the Cubs are? I haven't looked at it too closely yet, but they've got 3 players over 5K.
Yeah, they have 3 players over 5K, and the Contreras is 4.7, and then it drops to Zobrist, who's hitting second and is 3.6K.
Yeah, Zobrist I think is an okay value play. I think Albert Almora would have been if he was sitting near the top of the order. He's just 3K. So my interest in the Cubs kind of just, I don't know. I mean, if I have the money for Bryant as a plug, I'll use him. One thing that I mentioned, I was doing the Sharp Money article that you can find on RotoPros.com, just looking at the Vegas line movement and stuff. Josh Hader is in the Brewers bullpen, and he's one of the best young pitchers in baseball. He really should be in their starting rotation, but the way they're utilizing him this year is he's kind of just a multi-inning long reliever. He's very, very good, and Brent Suter doesn't generally pitch deep into games, so I don't think the Cubs will face Suter more than 2 times max through the order unless they just – I mean, if Suter's shutting them down, maybe he'll go a 3rd time through the order, but I could see Suter doing something like 4 innings, two runs, kind of limiting damage because he's okay. He's not good. He's not bad. He's just kind of whatever. And then Hader comes into the game, and it just becomes much more challenging for the Cubs to hit. Like, Hader could pitch 3 innings. He is that good, and he hasn't pitched, I think, in 4 days. That'll really limit the expected output for the Cubs if he's in. There's upside, though. Like, they won't use him if the Cubs are winning by a lot. But if the game's close, I think you're very likely to see him tonight. It's kind of a small factor, but the Cubs are pricey enough anyway that they need to do so much to pay off those salaries, and I think they will be popular just because there isn't another offense to really pay up for tonight. So I'm going to be very low on the Cubs. I think I will use Robbie Ray because of that. I know you just wanted me to go into pitchers, but I think with a 3-game slate, you kind of have to play more of a game theory angle and not just play the best values because it's so challenging to just fit good values, and we don't really have good values tonight. So the other pitchers, I mean, John Lester is a complete fade. I think you're definitely on board there, right? Like, what do you think of Lester right now?
I think he's garbage. I always thought he was spiraling out of control as he gets older. His velocity is actually down on all of his pitches based off his first outing. He struggled, to get any of the Marlins out, and that's just a red flag immediately if you're struggling against what's projected to a team that's projected to finish, in the bottom 5th of the majors this season. But I don't see a need to ever roster Lester moving forward. I think the regression is bound to come. He's entering that Cole Hamels kind of territory. That's kind of the pitcher I view him to, mold into as the season goes on.
So yeah, Nick's audio is a little kind of sporadic there, but I think most of what you're saying is, well, I don't think it's regression. It's not regression for Lester that's coming. Like, he's already been bad. He gave up a ton of runs last year. He was awful on opening day. I think he will pitch a little better than that going forward, but not enough where he's worth rostering at over 10K ever. Like, I think there will come a point this year where we can consider John Lester in good matchups when he gets a lot cheaper. But this is a hard matchup for him. The Brewers have a ton of righties in their lineup. Christian Yelich is out, and that's a downgrade even though he's left-handed because Yelich doesn't really have platoon splits. But the Brewers have enough righties on their bench that they can use instead of him that it's just fine. So, yeah, I have no interest in Lester. I think we'll get to the Brewers' offense because we both definitely like them. But as far as the other pitchers, I mean, I think it's Robbie Ray by default because you can't really use two pitchers that are 7K or less unless you're using the Cubs offense. And I just don't like that as a strategy. So I think it's Ray. And then amongst the other four guys, I don't think Suter will pitch deep enough into the game to really be worth using. There's not a lot of upside there. It's a really tough matchup in a hitter's park. So I'm off Suter too. And that leaves us with Wainwright, Bailey, and Brault. Those are awful choices. So to start with the Brault versus Bailey game, what do you see there between those two guys? Do you have any interest in either of them?
I have interest in basically Brault by default on this slate. Wainwright, I have no interest in using. Homer Bailey, he's just a pure gas can. And Suter, like you mentioned, he has a pitch count worry, and they have the good young kid in the relief. So by default, I just land on Brault. He's also the cheapest pitcher amongst them all. I haven't started to build lineups yet, but I don't know if that matters. In the article you mentioned on our website that there's a ton of sharp money hammering the Pirates, and there's a bunch of bad weather in the area. So that it sounds like it's going to be a scrappy pitcher's duel. And Brault, he had 4 starts late last season. Two of them, he had like a pretty decent outing. He, scored more than 10 DraftKings points, which is about what he needs to hit value. And then the other 2, he was in the negatives, but they were against 2 of the better offenses in the majors, against the Nationals and Cubs. So the sample size on Brault is small, but the price is, he doesn't need to do much to return value. And the lineup the Reds rolled out today it's very lefty heavy. He's a lefty pitcher. So the only 2 righties he has to worry about is basically Suarez and Duvall.
Well, I think Brault's the safest of the 3 options between Wainwright, Bailey, and Brault. He's the cheapest of the 3. He probably has the best expected value for his price, but I think there's so little upside for him. Brault doesn't strike guys out. He is kind of walk prone, so his pitch count gets up there. And yeah, it's not a great Reds lineup. It's kind of just okay. Losing Zach Cozart is going to make them a lot more beatable for left-handed pitchers. So I'm sort of just indifferent on Brault. I think I'll have some of him just because the price is so low. But I don't really like him as a play. Homer Bailey is an inferior option to Brault. I mean, just looking at the odds value, Brault's cheaper and the Pirates are minus 150 favorites. Bailey's 6.7K, Brault is 5.4. There was a time recently where Bailey was getting swinging strikes and throwing a little bit harder while still not getting great results in like 2016, 2017, a little last year. But his velocity has been declining. He's not that young anymore. I don't know. Homer Bailey is the 3rd choice of those 3 for me. But I think my preferred option to Brault is probably Adam Wainwright. Wainwright is probably a comparable pitcher overall to Steven Brault, but he is better at generating swings and misses. Or at least he used to be. Wainwright has had games with big strikeouts. He has a moderate strikeout rate, but it's still higher than Brault's. I mean, 7 Ks per 9 in the 7s, like it's not good, but I think Wainwright might just be the best of bad choices. And it might even be a little easier of a matchup for him than it is for Brault. So looking at the Diamondbacks lineup, I mean, Goldschmidt and Pollock are good. And then Peralta's good. But again, like the second half of the Diamondbacks lineup is not very good. Daniel Descalso, Alex Avila, Chris Owings, Gerard Dyson. It's sort of just a mediocre batting order. And I think Wainwright will not be very highly owned because I think most people will gravitate towards those cheaper pitchers. So I don't know. My thinking on pitching exposure is probably Ray for the most part with Brault and Wainwright split, and then maybe a little bit of Homer Bailey. But I think this is a really tough slate for pitching. Like I don't even know if I like playing it at all, just overall. But if I had to choose pitchers, I think it's Ray number 1, obviously, and then a split between Wainwright and Brault makes some sense. I'll throw this out there. I guess I have to find his price actually. Well, I'll let you go first. What do you think about Adam Wainwright? And then I guess we'll move on to offenses.
I kind of just automatically ruled out Adam Wainwright, but I mean that's pretty unintelligent of me. So I don't really have much faith in him, but the price is definitely low enough and the slate's small that it would make sense to have some exposure to him. And I think I'm on board with, splitting Brault and Wainwright. I don't know what to think of Homer Bailey. I mean, he could have a good outing, but just because of the weather and, the Pirates lineup isn't that deadly. But I think, if you're multi-entering GBPs, it definitely makes sense to just spread your exposure out to all of them and not go all in on any of them because all of them have red flags.
Yeah, that last thing you're saying there is definitely how I feel about it. There's not a lot of reason to like any of them, so kind of just mix around the cheap guys. I'm considering the idea. It's probably a bad idea of putting Josh Hader in lineups as a pitcher with Ray. Josh Hader's 4,000, and generally, like I would say, 99.99% of the time, rostering a reliever is a terrible idea. But I feel pretty confident Hader will at least pitch tonight. There's upside for him because if he comes in around the 5th inning, he has a decent chance to get the win bonus. Like if he comes in with the lead already, he pitches okay and just holds the lead. The reliever who is in when the 5th inning ends with a lead is the one who gets credited for the win. So there's a chance for that. I kind of feel stupid even bringing this up, but the amount of lineups that I would even think about doing that in, I don't know. If I had 20 lineups, maybe I'd put Hader in one of them. Just because the pitching options are so bad and there's so little upside for all of them. Robbie Ray has the most upside. He has the highest floor. So use him in all your lineups if you're even going to play the slate. And for cheaper options, I mean, yeah, I feel like a split of Wainwright and Brault is fine. A little bit of Homer Bailey exposure. And I may do one Josh Hader lineup just because I think there's upside there, even though there's also a chance he scores 0 points because he doesn't enter the game. That is probably it for pitching. I think hitting is a little more straightforward. Like I think we can actually find some good offensive value. So where are you looking on offense?
The only spot I think we're both in agreement on is the Brewers right-handers against Leicester. I think Leicester will garner, fairly heavy ownership, which this acts like as a double, positive. I don't really know the correct word for DFS, but targeting against the fairly high-owned pitcher on a small slate, creates a ton of upside, both when the pitcher is doing bad and you're benefiting from the pitcher doing bad. So, Kane, Santana, Braun, Aguilar, Perez, Arcia, they loaded up the lineup with right-handers against Leicester today. The Brewers are also, I don't know the exact statistics, but I think I'm almost positive they were, one of the teams that were very aggressive around the bases last year, attempting to steal a ton of bases. And with the addition of Kane and Santana, at the top of the lineup, I think they will, if those guys get on base, they're going to definitely be looking to run against Leicester, who has, is the worst at keeping base runners.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because even though Leicester can't pick guys off, Wilson Contreras is so good defensively that runners don't actually have that much of an edge stealing against the Cubs. But it is still an edge. I forget exactly what the numbers are. I guess it's not that important, but Contreras does kind of mitigate some of the downside that John Lester has holding runners. But the Brewers do have a lot of righties. Lorenzo Cain is a big addition for them, and especially against lefties. Domingo Santana batting second at 3.4K. That's one of the best value plays tonight. Jesus Aguilar, 2.9, batting fifth. Hernan Perez, 2.9, batting sixth. I don't really love Orlando Arcia and Jet Bandy, but they're both right-handed and they're both cheap, so I think they're fine. I'd still even use Travis Shaw, even though he's left-handed. He's 3.9, batting right in the middle of the order, and I think Ryan Braun's a good play too. So stacking the Brewers, that's my primary target also. I don't really think Leicester will be that highly owned, though. So that's not really the reason I'm doing it. I just think the expected output for the Brewers is higher than any other team on the slate. Maybe the Cubs are comparable, but the Cubs are just so much more expensive. If I had to rank the three highest owned pitchers, I think Ray will still be number one because people are going to pay up. I think Brault will be number two because then you need salary savings. And then I think Lester could be number three. So it's not like he'll be a low owned pitcher. I think he'll have moderate ownership and there's probably a little bit of leverage stacking against him. But it's just a really good spot for the Brewers. So that's the main reason I'm targeting them. I think as far as stacks, the bad weather game in Pittsburgh is a fade for me. But both of those pitchers are so walk prone that I do like targeting the stolen base guys on both teams. So Starling Marte, he's a little expensive, but I think he's a good play. And I do like Corey Dickerson a little. I mean, not for the stolen bases, but he's just cheap and batting fifth. And he's lefty against Bailey, who's right-handed. So Dickerson's a good plug. So from that game, or from the Pirates side of the game, I think that Marte and Dickerson would be the two guys I use the most. Everyone else is a little pricey, and the weather is bad, so not much power hitting. From the Red side, Billy Hamilton at 3.1K leading off. Hamilton's a terrible hitter, but if he gets on base, there's so much upside for him to steal. And Brault does walk a lot of guys. So I think Hamilton's a good play. And then that's probably it from the Reds. Adam Duvall's a little cheap. I think he makes some sense. And Jose Peraza steals some bases too. He's batting seventh, and he's under 3K. And I'd probably mix in Eugenio Suarez also. He's kind of just fairly priced, but I don't think there are that many great options tonight. So it's just a few plugs from that game. Do you see anyone else from the Reds or Pirates that you like?
No, you didn't really mention Polanco, but he's in the same category as Marte with the steals. And is there are one of those, are either the Pirates or Reds, do either one of them have like a significantly worse bullpen than the other, just in case one of the starters has an early exit?
I think the Reds and Pirates both have kind of just average bullpens. I don't think there's any reason to particularly target those teams. All the teams on the slate tonight just kind of have okay bullpens. So there's not really an edge to be had there. It's just a lot of decent relief pitching for everybody. So I guess let's get to the last game we haven't covered yet for offense. That's the Diamondbacks and the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals righties do have some upside. And I actually wouldn't be that uncomfortable using a Cardinals righty in the same lineup as Robbie Ray. I wouldn't stack the Cardinals because I think Ray is good enough that they shouldn't do that well, but there's home run potential against Ray. He gives up a lot of hard contact, and the Cardinals do have power from the right side. So I think I would mix in Pham, Ozuna, and Jose Martinez, even in lineups that include Ray. And Fowler too, but I don't really have much interest in the Cardinals overall. They're a little underpriced, but I just like the Brewers better. And if you're using Ray in basically all of your lineups, you can't really stack against him. It just kind of mitigates a lot of upside. So I know you like the Cardinals a bit, but I think just if you stack the Cardinals, there's just no other pitching to use. Like, how would you go about that? If you're making a Cardinals stack, who are the pitchers you use in that stack?
That's the question. Probably
cut out for a second. Let's see if we can get it to work if you try to say it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can. It's just been cutting in and out, but I
mean, at first glance I thought it would be a good idea, but I don't. I mean, unless you use Lester and then mix Lester and Wainwright, I guess makes the most sense from a Cardinal stack standpoint, But
yeah, I just don't think it makes sense from a lineup construction standpoint. Yeah, I mean, you can use Lester with them, but I don't think that's a good. Like, I don't think there's enough upside I don't think there's enough expected output on average for the Cardinals, and I just really hate Lester as a play. So I'd rather just mostly fade the Cardinals offense. And I don't really think I like the Diamondbacks offense too much either. I don't mind Goldschmidt and Pollock as plugs. They're overpriced, but it's kind of just fine. Wainwright's pretty bad. So in non-Wainwright lineups, I'd use the top of the Diamondbacks order. I think Alex Avila is a decent catcher play. Jarrod Dyson has stolen base upside. He's only 2.8K. Not a particularly good hitter, and he's batting eighth. So I don't know. The Diamondbacks just look okay to me. And I think on a normal slate, the Cardinals would have some value, but just for this slate, I don't think it works. We have a question, well, I guess sort of a question for FanDuel. The Yankee game is actually on the FanDuel slate. So let me just look at the prices there real quick because it's a much different breakdown there. The Yankees hitters obviously are in a great spot against Andrew Cashner. Cashner is awful. It's in Yankee Stadium. The Yankees offense is actually kind of reasonably priced. So I think for the FanDuel slate, I would definitely stack the Yankees as much as possible. Tanaka, I'm a little bit iffy on. I think he's okay. Him and Robbie Ray are about the same price, and Lester's price there too. So just looking at it quickly, I think I would mix Tanaka and Ray. I think they both have a lot of upside. And then the Yankees offense is just, it's the best expected output of any team by far. I mean, if they were on the DraftKings slate, that would be our pick there too. And then I still like the Brewers for FanDuel. They're cheap on FanDuel also. You actually get Jesus Aguilar and Hernan Perez at min price. So that would be my route. I would use Ray or Tanaka with Yankee stacks and then just mix in Brewer stacks as like a secondary team. And I'd also consider the Cardinals more so on FanDuel, because if you're using Tanaka, then you don't have to worry about using them directly against your pitcher. So Yankees #1, Brewers #2, Cardinals #3 for FanDuel. And then for DraftKings, I guess we have it covered. I'm not sure if I don't know, is there anything else you want to say? Because I think we pretty much got it.
No, I think that about wraps it up for today's show. So you can go ahead and follow Matt on Twitter at Preaching Sense, or our handle as a company at DFS RotoPros. And we will be back with you guys tomorrow for the main evening slate.
All right. Yep. Back tomorrow for the main slate. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you then.